July 24th, 2024, and this is the TG3 meeting. Today we're going to review the agenda for plenary next week.
Folks can see.
Yep.
And the size is okay?
Yes, it's legible to me.
Okay. So the first items are consensus issues. Not sure, do any of these stick out to anybody as interesting for us? Indirect eval PR. Maybe.
I'm just curious about what the propagate active script module or job callback record thing is about.
Yeah, oh, is this a new one? This isn't.
I'll paste the link in the chat and then I'll pull it up if I can find
Thank
the
you.
chat. WebEx controls while screen sharing are not ideal. Oh, okay, there we go. 3195. So this is in the WhatWig spec, HTML spec.
Interesting. Reviewing it.
So this is to address an inconsistency across ECMA 262 and HTML. Okay, so this is basically normalizing the spec to match reality effectively. That's how I'm reading this.
Yeah.
That's how I read it too. And it looks like that the web behavior is correct to me.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the stuff they're proposing in this.
What do you mean by correct?
That it's propagating, well, let's see. This get active scriptor module is given.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so getter active scriptor module is responsible for carrying the environment record forward from the current turn to the scheduled turn, such that if you schedule a job from one realm, that the job will be created in the same realm. But this is
I think it's just about making sure the script is active at the right times. I mean, this is just reflecting what browser's already doing, I think.
Yeah, well, this touches upon evaluator behavior, I think, and what we want should be discussed together with 3160. This is the one that we care about, that we know Nicolo is championing interests, that we know that Nicolo supports our position with regard to evaluators on 3160. And that is that the behavior we want.
I see the relation.
Can I see the end of Dominic's comment? That's new to me.
Yeah, the one from just, okay. This one?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Dominic's preference is to preserve the behavior in Firefox and Chrome, but it can be changed.
I don't. That's not quite I understood it.
Say that again?
I think you're having a lag. You might need to repeat that.
No, sorry, I'm trying to understand. I think what Dominic is saying is that currently Firefox and Chrome are interoperable, but it is a surprising behavior, and that it would be okay changing it.
Yeah, the don't break the web mandate is only for cross-browser web.
Yeah.
I think he's just saying tread carefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be really neat if we had the get scripter active module natively, and I don't want to like hint that we kind of do, but
You
kinda
mean
just, get scripter native module like as an actual like utility that you could call from any realm to see what script or like native module you're in. There actually is the V8 stack trace introspection API actually lets you do this, kinda, sorta. You're not
This
getting any.
sounds terrible. I mean, what you're suggesting, this is a recipe for dynamic scoping, for being sensitive to who your caller is, which is the last thing we should be, you know, that's
Yeah,
a
it's
hole
just-
we don't want to dig ourselves into any deeper.
It's just interesting because it's already exposed. That's all.
with the error stack
Yeah, the-
API on V8,
Well,
which is
with
not.
stack trace, that API.
The V8 error stack, which sensors, and which is not cross-browser anyway.
Wait, how does SES censor it? There's like hidden accessors that you have to like. I don't even know what to. That's confusing. I guess
Well-
if you like make a non-writable property on error.prepare stack trace, you could prevent it.
We don't share the original error constructor with confined programs. That's in general.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Though that seems really hard to enforce, like almost impossible.
Well, so let's make that a challenge. If you can break SES's enforcement of that, that's a security breach. Please, if you find that, actually, please file a responsible disclosure. But yeah, we've worked very hard to make that error enforcement in SES robust.
Oh, I thought SES was like pseudo deprecated. So there's like active development still, or?
Oh yeah. SES is, yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll like look into it and submit a thing. Though,
why did you think SES was deprecated?
from all of I've seen lots of talks from dependencies and issues that are being closed that were related to, or not in the SES repo, but in what was it? The thing built around SES, lava mode or whatever, that thing. Or is it built
Lava
on top of, or what's the relation between lava mode and SES? Sorry.
Lava mode is built on SES, yeah. And what is lava mode closing? I have not been following it.
There's just a few like issues here and there I've noticed in the lava mode GitHub that they're saying certain things are out of scope that I can't, since my own personal work, you know, we have disclosure restrictions, but certain things being closed are things that we have like solutions for and know that can be solved. So it's interesting.
Okay.
seeing certain
But
parts
can
being
you,
given up on.
I'll,
It's not, yeah, it's not really my responsibility to help, or actually can't actually help. I can only just say this is something we did that you haven't done. That's all I can leave it at. I can just say what things are possible. That's all. There was like
Okay.
two or three tasks that were like, well, those are definitely solvable, but looks like they got marked as out of scope.
Okay, since you have opinions about the possible enforceability of censoring the error stacks on V8, please do take a look at what CES is doing, and if you find a weakness there, please do let us know.
All right, yeah, sounds good to me. I just hope eventually this API gets kicked away from the web. There's a really good reason Safari doesn't support it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you shouldn't know what extensions people have installed, but you can in Chrome and Firefox. It's and I'm saying this from untrusted web content, can tell, even if the extension barely interacts with your page.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bad.
Hopefully it gets completely nixed in the future.
Well, there's an error stack proposal that Jordan and I don't know, Jordan, are you on the call? Okay, no, Jordan. There's an error stack proposal that Jordan and I are co-championing that's been, not making progress for a long time because both of our attentions have been elsewhere, but we do want to advance it. And it would bring a much more modest but standardized API for error stacks. And
I'm interested. Definitely send it to me over in the chat. I'd love to see it.
Okay.
All right, Chris, you're driving. So we were looking at the normative PR for script or module. I think that what we can say is that this is something that we need to pay attention to because it crosses our path. But perhaps we need to look at that out of band in greater detail.
All right.
Do we want to chase this to ground on the call, Mark or Matthew?
I don't think so. I think we've already chased this and decided whatever Nicolo is proposing is the right thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So dropping assert from import attribute seems like an obvious change. This is the one where this is import attributes have changed assert to be type with type. That's a.
I'm surprised this is web compatible. This is amazing that we can actually deprecate something in the spec or remove something from the spec. Like, is that the first time?
Probably due to lack of shipping, but yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been live for long, and
I know, but even then, like, we thought it had shipped, so we thought we couldn't remove it. So
yeah.
That's amazing.
There was actually an ES3 feature that ES5 set us up to eventually retire, that we were then able to retire from the spec many, many years later. It took a long time for it to fade out.
What was the
actually, feature? It was arguments.caller.
Oh,
one of the sloppy .caller things, or maybe it was the callee thing. It was one of those things. It was in 4 places, and we were able to drop one based on. It took a very long time after ES5 and strict mode, more and more places before we found we could actually drop one of them.
Yeah, I haven't used caller in like a decade, but I'm not sure if it's fully dropped. I know callee is still around, but yeah, caller, it'd be interesting if that was successfully dropped. I'd love to see more info.
All right, so I think that we unlikely to come to bear on interlocale info or temporal. Atomics pause we've discussed, I think, to our heart's content, and also regex escape, I think, is in a place where we've talked everything over. Joint iteration also. Error is going for 2 points.
Am I the only one whenever I see the phrase joint iteration? He hears the words of the song Dem Bones going through their head.
Yes.
Yes, confirmed.
Yeah, confirm the Chip, you're the only one.
I'm not saying that I don't see pun opportunities.
You might be compromised. You should like reset your environment.
Yeah, for sure. Or you're the only sane person in the room, Chip. It's one or the other.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Oh yeah, this will be a bike shed for 30 minutes. 30-minute bike shed.
Hmm.
That will overflow.
So error is error. The only remaining issue was whether it pierced proxies, right? And I believe that Jordan took a position that we're content with. Is that right? I believe that.
Yeah, I've argued myself into being content with either answer on that one.
All right.
I think the position is to remove it. So yeah.
I haven't looked at the error is error thing in a while. Does that also cover aggregate error?
Almost certainly.
Yes.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Aggregate error is an error, so it should be true.
Arguably.
Well, I have to look at the spec, but I'm pretty sure.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
All right.
Errors, even errors.
It either is or it isn't. I mean,
Is an error really an error until you throw it?
yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. In this language, it happens to be the case. Yeah.
I guess in
Yeah,
terms of inheritance.
there's actually a internal property that is the internal property on errors in the spec.
What internal property are you referring to?
The,
Presumably, the internal property that error is checking for the presence of. It's certainly not doing an instance of like prototype walk.
that's right. It's not doing that.
Error data internal slot.
That's right. That's the one.
Yeah. So if we look at aggregate error, there will presumably be an error data internal slot. There it is for the last bullet.
Interesting. If an error is thrown in a forest and this internal slot isn't updated, was it really thrown?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The important thing is that everything special about an error happens to it on creation, including de facto and in the proposal, the stack capture. The stack capture does not happen on throwing, it happens on creation.
Gotcha.
This was not always true. If I recall. I don't believe that was always true.
Yeah, actually, you're right about that. It wasn't always true. I actually was parsing error stacks 12 years ago, and like that like internal slot was only like updated with like certain errors and stuff like that. Like you literally could call a new error and it wouldn't even like there's like internals that were triggered.
All right.
I
So
don't know the whole details, but yeah, nowadays if you call new error, you do get like a full normal stack, and the internal stuff is proper.
yeah, this is that I think that yeah, my memories of bizarre behavior predate ES5.
Yeah, you had to like try catch and then execute like call a number or whatever stuff like that.
So is template object?
There's template objects going for 2.7. So the things we might care about are with the cross-realm checks. Doesn't work well across proxies. Oh, here's Mark. You getting a shout out, Mark?
Yep, I see it.
Trusted types going ahead without help for literals. Cross-realm brand checks were simpler. Champion's preference is sticking with cross-realm.
Yeah, and the reason why I've made my peace with that is that any security relevant use of multiple realms should be using shadow realms, not direct realm from object contact. Direct realm to object contact is already very, very hard to secure, which is why the callable boundary suggestion was welcome. And in the scenario where there's no direct contact, then the isTemplate object effectively acts as a check on one's own template map rather than an internal property check. It's not observably different than a check on the internal map.
So I think that, so we are not going to object to this proceeding.
Yeah, I will make that point, but we're not going to object.
Okay. All right, async context update. Mark?
I just, well, one more thing about the, we'll make that point, and in addition, I'm going to give a preview of the fact that with multiple compartments and evaluators, we probably want the map check to be per compartment. So that will leverage the per realm story that's only true under shadow realms in extending it to compartments.
It might be necessary to look at where the data structures are currently housed in the proposal as it stands.
Well, right, the proposal as it stands is checking an internal property, which is inherently cross-realm, and it would be inherently cross-compartment. So we're going to need to, when we generalize it for compartments, we're going to need to change things, but we only need to change them with regard to code evaluated by the new evaluators, code evaluated by the evaluator of the, is that true? Maybe it's not true. Okay, so we're going to have to really be careful about the spec language when we introduce multiple evaluators.
Huh.
All right. Async context update with no additional information. So I don't know what that consists of. Therefore,
Well,
Oh,
it's an
yeah.
update. We don't have to decide whether to let it advance.
sure. It would be nice to have materials available, though, although there's no advancement going. Decimal coming for stage 2 for the third time or second time.
Are we going to block decimal for stage 2, and on what grounds?
I don't know that it matters much because I'm pretty sure that it's going to be blocked for stage 2 anyway.
Yeah, it still behooves us to decide whether we should block it if no one else does. And that's not necessarily a TG3 decision. It's probably more of a decision on the individual participants here, since none of the reasons for blocking it have anything to do with security. So I think it's fair to say that TG3 does not need to make a decision on this.
Well, security outside of the sense of what's it called? Just denial of service, like obviously.
Decimal?
Well, I mean, not being available. I mean, not really. Yeah, not denial of service, right? I guess it's just reliability or accessibility.
I'm not understanding.
I'm just like being pedantic that like not having this available is, I guess, like it. You know, your app. If you need this logic, if you need decimal, then it's not available because it's not in this language right now, and you need a library like around big number, whatever. Yeah, just ignore me. Sorry.
We're
Okay.
punning. We're punning on denial of service at this point.
Okay.
Ignore me. I really shouldn't. Just yeah.
All right. So,
The
yeah. So,
proposal is to add a Java, what is effectively JavaScript standard library for Decimal. So you do not have to bring your own library for Decimal.
And also a couple syntax improvements too, sounds like. But yeah.
all right. Yeah. Okay.
Concurrency control. I think we talked about this last week a little bit. Yes, we did.
We
Now
did.
we have these fancy slides, but I don't think there's anything new.
And we have the important thing that we learned last week is that none of these constructions touch upon parallelism.
Yeah, and I think we got a agreement in principle to change the terminology from semaphore to something else.
Did we?
Michael confirmed that we were not the only folks concerned with the name. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, it's stage one anyway, so there's a lot of time to try and make a change there if folks want to make a change.
In any case, I really like the approach that they're taking for this, like gradually expanding the expressiveness, so that the simple cases are simple and the complex cases are coming soon. Ooh.
I think we have animation.
I like it.
Yes, I made similar animations for my general theory of reactivity presentation. This is very familiar. Mm-hmm. It's really funny that on the one hand we have so toAsync is consistent with something like toString, and unordered is consistent with .sorted, but they're not consistent between each other. Like dot unordered implies a dot arrayed. Not that I would seriously suggest it. Yeah. And two array implies two unordered.
Well, that's it for the agenda.
Wow, you're not kidding. This is a light one.
Yeah, we will be done on day 2, I think, unless we need continuations for items or something.
There's definitely a bike shed that could expand. There's a bike shed in here that could certainly expand to fill 4 days.
There are a few potential bike sheds that could be painted.
Yeah. All right.
So one thing, is async context going for an update or
no stage advancement?
They're going for stage. No, okay.
They are not.
No stage advancement.
No stage.
Of these,
I know there has been a lot of discussions on the async context. I have not been able to follow. I expect there may be contentious things coming up. From what I understand, there's an attempt to have multiple contexts available through the async context mechanism, both have a way to propagate both the calling context and the registration context. So, and by calling context, I think it's for promises, it would be the equivalent of the resolving context. I don't know. I don't know where things landed at right now. But this potentially can expose more information, which could be interesting for some use cases, but I don't think we have thought through the implications.
I do want to mention that in the sorry, I'll let whoever that is pass. I do want to mention that in the README or explainer for async context, one example given is Zone.js and how they might be able to use this. from my own understanding of how they've been implementing things and wanting to coexist, I doubt they would actually be able to adopt this. Not that other libraries couldn't benefit from it.
Yeah, zones have, yeah, in a way,
Yeah, like,
it's our hope that async context obviates zones and domains and all of the other times that this particular feature has come up and been implemented poorly.
yeah, I just want zone to go away for sure. I mean, like the very first day I heard about it, it was like a day after releasing a library from people telling me it breaks it. So, and for the last 10 years, that actually has been a common occurrence. Every single time I ever hear the word zone, it's because it breaks some product.
Yep. Okay. If
Is
there's
there-
anything on the agenda that I wanted to poke at more rigorously, not necessarily on this call, it's the script or the active script or module issue. Um, we have not chased that to the ground, whether that's compatible with evaluators in the proposed form.
Just let me double check. In a situation where the only realm-to-realm realm-to-realm contact is through shadow realms and the call of a boundary, the issue in question becomes meaningless. Is that correct?
Actually, I don't know. It might not. The evaluator isolation requires that certain checks for the active script or module pass through the environment record associated with the evaluator that was used to execute your current fragment of code, right? So so if you are, for example, if you have a function that was constructed from the function constructor for a particular batch of evaluators, when you execute that code, the active script or module needs to be referenced through the evaluators that were associated with the internal slot on the function constructor you used. And I am not sure whether that particular invariant is in play with the for the normative PR in question.
But I mean, right now in the spec, there's only one evaluator per realm.
Yes.
So
So if the nature of your question is whether the issue can be deferred until evaluators, then the answer is yes.
okay,
We could
Okay.
fix this. We could fix all of these in the scope of the evaluators proposal, but my preference is to not, because the decisions about these are difficult to reverse.
right.
My preference is to know before we hit evaluators.
I am concerned in general about punting until evaluators for a lot of these virtualizability questions. And also, yeah, it's just it really says also it also means that evaluators are more and more something that can only be implemented by that cannot be shimmed.
Good point. Very good point.
Bring up the agenda again for myself, and
Wait a second. If we did it the way we want it in the spec, we would still be unable to shim it, right?
we the constraints are the same as we have for compartments, right? That
Right.
we can shim it, but we have to forbid eval and dynamic import.
Right. We cannot, the, well,
Syntax.
the shim, I mean, our shim together with, the shim cannot shim direct eval. I mean, we just cannot emulate direct eval, period.
Currently, dynamic import is the only thing we can't fix in a shim.
We can't fix dynamic import in eval context in the shim. We could implement dynamic eval or put dynamic import in the module context because of the transform.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other things. Like if we start adding virtualizability hook to evaluators, now we can't shim that anymore. That came up earlier, like Mark, you were mentioning the array is template objects. That's
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. There's, if we make it per evaluator the way I would like, I don't see any good way to shim that. Yeah, it's a good example.
Which is to say that we would have to deny the is template array to compartmentalize.
So, I mean, that's a good example. What is a concern with being able to know if an object is a template array across compartments?
Well, okay. So the motivation is, can I trust the data in this template to have been authored by code that I consider vetted? And in a situation like an XS machine where there are no multiple realms, where there's just one realm for the for all of it, for all of time, and all mutual suspicion is between compartments, if the use of the isTemplate object test is, can I trust that this is from code that I vetted? You don't want that to pass for a template that comes from code that originated in a different compartment, which therefore you might consider to be attacker code. It just completely destroys the entire motivation for the isTemplate object test.
And is that what the motivation for that predicate is?
Yes.
Trusting.
It's basically it's to build trusted types as an injection attack, as a defense against injection attacks.
I don't understand how you go from checking that an object is a template. I mean, I would need to go back to the proposal to read its interactions with trusted types again. But on the face of it, the name of it is like isTemplate object, and that seems to be very innocuous. Like it seems to be like, oh, is it a special kind of frozen object, basically?
Okay. So here's my challenge for anyone here looking at the actual proposal. See if you can find any other motivation for it other than the one I stated. Because if it's just a special form of frozen, what do we care? Why is it there at all? Why add it to the language?
Yeah, I need to go back to the proposal. But I think in general, I mean, that's a case of that is this case. But I know we've discussed before, like that some checks would need to be virtualized per compartment or evaluators, and it makes me very uncomfortable to have hooks like that.
Yeah. The issue about can we shim it is an interesting test bring to any elaboration of evaluators. obviously it shouldn't necessarily be a gating consideration, because sometimes the reason why we bring something as a proposal and to get it into the language is precisely because we cannot solve it by shipping. But that's a trade-off to make on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, looking at the motivation for is template object makes me uncomfortable that it's using a check of what kind of object is this to assume its provenance.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
just
Yeah, and if it's going to assume its provenance, if that's the motivation, then allowing the check to pass no matter where the template object comes from is exactly destroying the utility of a provenance check.
I mean, this is already assuming that the attacker doesn't have eval powers.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that we could imagine doing in a multi-compartment CES machine like XS is that we've got evaluators on in some compartments and off in other compartments. And the ones in which it is off are the ones that want to see, is this one of my own templates?
Actually,
that fits perfectly well with this kinds of stories that are motivating.
Is there a simpler thing here? Can we say like that any template objects created during an eval doesn't pass the check? Like, we don't care about, like,
well, so the thing is, if it's loaded not through evaluation, if it's just loaded through module loading, but still code that I don't trust loaded in a compartment containing code that I don't trust, I still don't want it to pass my check if the purpose of the check is provenance. And if the purpose of the check is something other than provenance, what is the purpose of the check? I've never heard any other purpose stated. But you're right that with regard to the whole thing about coupling it to the suppression of eval, they could just have it be the case that evaluated templates aren't tagged. That doesn't rescue it, but it does narrow it.
it's just a strange use case. All right.
I want to go back to the propagation of scripter module, if I may share. As soon as I find my window. This might be it. Everyone see normative propagate active script or module job callback record? Yay or nay?
I do.
So my interpretation of what behavior this should have would be that so check me if I'm wrong, but presumably one would schedule a job to execute set location href in a future turn, and then we would look up the environment of an internal slot of this function in order to determine the active script. Is that right?
What is the observable effect of determining the active script?
The active script determines what your base path will be for a dynamic import.
Oh, okay. This is the whole base URL thing. Okay, got it.
And I have no idea what's going on here.
So the base URL thing is, if the base URL thing is the, oh no, because it's used for module loading, it is observable in JavaScript. Okay, so we do have to, we can't keep this under the web-only rug.
Right. Though dynamic import in the host environment is host defined. So
Yes, and sweeping under the host-defined rug is especially
yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So my impression is that I don't think that the prose legend Nikas is proposing is consistent with our aims, but I'm not. But I don't think that what we're proposing is one of the options that is being that is. I don't think that what we want to happen is what is written in 262 or in and codified in the implementation of the web.
Do you think there might be a way to write something that is both web compatible and factored in such a way as to make the introduction of evaluators and compartments easier?
There's a possibility, but this is not my forte. I would defer to knowing that Nicolo knows what we're looking for. I trust Nicolo on this topic.
Yep.
But
Likewise.
I don't understand the HTML or the T262 spec well enough to comment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in general, get active script or module is precious. I think that this is very much hints at dynamic scope. It's used running script or module based on the running execution context. Yeah, if you're consulting this, you're getting dynamic scoping behavior.
Okay.
We are just about at time.
Yeah, you're right. We'll call it at that. I'll just say, got more. We have to think about this one more.
All right.
All right.